What's going on YouTube? It's Repulse back in another video. In today's video, we are going through every NFL team's free agent signings 8 hours into free agency as it kicked off at 11 a.m. today for me, and it's 7:14 right now. Um, and just analyzing what they got and giving them a ranking from A to F of where they stand so far. Starting off with the Cardinals, who got Josh Sweat and Akeem Davis-Gaither. Josh Sweat, dynamic player, good rusher for the Eagles, really good player. Gave him a lot of money. He has a knee concern, but you're going back to Jonathan Gannon, who was your DC in Philadelphia. I think it'll be a good scheme fit and pretty much a bump and run there for Josh Sweat. You arrive, you already know what's going to happen. You're going to play on that edge, be one of those predominant edge rushers for the Cardinals. I think he's going to be a day one starter no matter what, just due to the amount he got paid, and I think he's worth that money. Less than $20 million a year, which I thought he'd get a little bit more than, but um, you lost out on Milton Williams, who you're in for, and just reallocated that money to Josh Sweat, who's um, an exciting rusher. So I like that signing. And Akeem Davis-Gaither, a good linebacker, serviceable player, can play special teams if you want him to, but I think really serviceable when he's out on the field, has decent instincts, solid for the Bengals the past couple of years. So yeah, two good signings there. The only two signings, I'd say you're somewhere around a B plus. Moving on to the Falcons, who haven't signed anyone, um, kind of just lackluster. Let Drew Dahlman walk to the Bears and cut Grady Jarrett, who also went to the Bears. And that was only two things that happened from anyone on your roster. You had a lot of expiring guys, and I'd like to see you re-sign um, or sign a pass rusher such as a Matthew Judon. Uh, but yeah, haven't really done much. Actually, just haven't done anything at all, so I can't really give you a rank. So yeah, you're just getting an F for now, just because you haven't done anything. Moving on to the Ravens, who also haven't done anything. They let Brandon Stevens walk, one of their starting corners from last year. They let Malik Harrison go to the Steelers for $5 million a year, and they let one of their starting guards go to the Jaguars for $12.5 million a year. So alongside the Falcons, the Ravens haven't done anything, so they get an F. Moving on to the Bills, who have had two signings, one that I really like in Joshua Palmer. I think a guy that could be a good wide receiver 3 alongside Keon Coleman and Khalil Shakir. Um, Really young, really exciting player to play on the boundary. Really good catch radius, able to high point the ball very well. One of the exciting players on that Chargers offense that was pretty lackluster last year. Um, and Michael Hoke from the Rams, able to rush the passer if you want him to, but also able to play that off-ball linebacker in a Matt Milano type mold. Get him for $8 million a year. Pretty decent signing there. Um, two pretty young guys in the free agency period that I really like. So if we're giving the Cardinals a B plus, I'd be at a B minus for the Bills so far. Moving on to the Panthers, who have splashed a lot of money today. Trayvon Moehrig goes from the Raiders to them for $17 million a year. Tershawn Wharton goes from the Chiefs to them for $15 million a year. Patrick Jones from Minnesota to them for $10 million a year, and they re-signed Michael Jackson for pretty much a $500,000 a year. And then they signed Bobby Brown from the Rams with undisclosed value. In all honesty, I really like this free agency class. I know that they were in for Milton Williams, who went to the Patriots. Also, the Cardinals were, but unable to secure his signature, so you pivot to Tershawn Wharton, who's a really good D end in my opinion. Was pretty productive for the Chiefs last year. I don't think this has stats on here actually. Now that I think about it, that was dumb. Yeah. You get him for $15 million a year, $30 million guaranteed, so you're paying him at least 10 a year. But I think someone that would feed off Derek Brown very well. Trayvon Moehrig, I said this in my initial reaction video because he signed pretty early on. A guy that I really like. I think he's getting better every single year of his career. Pretty young as well. Almost 26, but one of the younger guys in the free agency class. Will leave the Panthers around 29 years of age. Patrick Jones, another good depth piece. Really good rusher. Someone that can provide solid depth, or also start if you're running a 3-4 and have a 5-man front with blitzes off the edge. Patrick Jones could do that for you. Michael Jackson just retaining one of your solid players for cornerback depth, as the secondary needs bolstering. And Bobby Brown, a really good interior guy for the Rams last year, young from A&M, um, good at stopping the run, can get to the quarterback when needed. Um, Intrigued to see what the value is, but overall for the Panthers right now, I'd be sitting at an A minus for them. Moving on to the Bears, who I think have won day one of free agency. Um, Dio, Deo Odeyingbo, one of the freaks of the Colts, the red score guys. 35-inch arms or something like that. It's absolutely absurd. Hasn't really been productive, but has shown flashes of being able to get to the quarterback. So I think the $16 million a year value is fair, especially for a young rusher of that size, around like 6'6", 260. Um, just an absolute freak. Um, and I think someone that's going to shine for the Bears. Drew Dalman, one of the best centers against the run, getting $14 million a year. The Bears desperately needed to address the interior O line coming into the offseason, and they've done that with Jonah Jackson, um, Joe Tooney, and Drew Dalman. Is it Jonah Jackson? I always get the Jackson messed up. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, Jonah Jackson. But Drew Dalman was like the final piece of the puzzle. Really good against the run at the center position. Can block against the pass, but a lot better against the run. A signing that I really like. And then Grady Jarrett, really good D tackle, Pro Bowl level D tackle, just got cut by the Falcons earlier today and signed for the Chicago Bears shortly after. Pretty cheap deal uh, at $11.5 million for someone that caliber, but he's getting 3 years of it, so it's a little much, I think. But the Bears are splashing money, and they're splashing money, and at a good rate, and I think they'll continue to across free agency. These two guys more of depth piece. Tarvarius Moore to be safety 3, safety 4, and Durham Smythe to be a tight end 3, tight end 4. But in my opinion, the Bears had one of the best complete free agencies in the first couple hours. So in my opinion, they get an A. The Bengals had a lot of movement. Um, they didn't really get any big guys. They let guys like Alex Kappa, Keem Davis Gaither, who we already talked about, and Sheldon Rankins leave. Signed Samaje Perine, who comes back to the Bengals to be a power back, I'm assuming. To Daryl Slayton, one of the cheap guys, like a Sheldon Rankins, pretty much just to replace his services. Joseph Osai, re-signed, good, young, exciting rusher. And then Oren Burks, who the Eagles actually wanted to keep, but the Bengals were able to get him for cheap. A signing that I like, but nothing really too flashy, just pretty much depth pieces are solid players to retain. So for that matter, I'm going to give them a C+. Moving on to the Browns, who have done nothing. Let one of their tackles go to the Giants for $6 million a year. So for that, as always, you're just getting an F. The Cowboys have just signed Javonte Williams, I think. If it wants to load. Oh, and a long snapper. I forgot about that. That became a meme. They let Jordan Lewis and Chuma Edoga go to the Jaguars. Signed Javonte Williams to a pretty cheap deal. A deal that I actually like. I think he could be a good back for them. Um, Always a dependable guy for the Broncos the past couple years. Able to be an RB2 or an RB1 if need be. And then Trent Sieg, just a long snapper you're keeping on contract. So for them, I'm gonna just give them a C minus. Haven't really done too much. The Broncos have had a really good free agency though. They got Talanoa Hufanga for $15 million a year, one of my favorite safeties in this free agency class. And Dre Greenlaw, one of the best linebackers in this class, for $35 million over 3 years, so about $12 million a year, not quite. And Matt Pert re-signed for $3.5 million a year. Matt Pert, depth piece, um, backup tackle that can fill in at either spot. Dre Greenlaw, one of the best outside linebackers in the league when healthy. That's just the big question of when he can stay healthy after that ACL tear in the Super Bowl. Talanoa Hufanga, also another question of if he can stay healthy, but one of the most productive safeties in the league. So signing that I do actually really like for the Broncos. Overall, I'd say that these two signings are two very, very big signings in Talanoa Hufanga and Dre Greenlaw, and I'd put them at that B plus tier so far. The Lions pretty much had a cornerback swap, but I think they came out better. Um, Carlton Davis went to the Patriots for $20 million a year, and they got DJ Reed for 16. A guy that I really like from the Jets, able to play that boundary corner really well, very instinctive, very good at at being a smooth corner, and that just means getting off breaks well, flipping the hips well. Just a really good corner overall. For a cheap deal and 16 million, I think a player that's better than Carlton Davis, getting for $12 million cheaper, $4 million a year cheaper. So can't really fault them too much, but they haven't done really anything else. So I'm just going to give them a B minus because they're able to get a star corner. The Packers were able to get Nate Hobbs for 4 years, $48 million of total value. Sorry, averaging out to $12 million a year. I really like the signing. Either he plays the nickel or um, he can try to play the outside, but I think he's better at the nickel. But it depends what you do in the draft or what you address in the rest of free agency. But only $16 million guaranteed. The thing with Nate Hobbs is he's not really healthy all that much, but you're able to get him for pretty cheap in terms of total guaranteed money. So if he doesn't stay healthy, you're pretty much owing him $4 million a year. Um, so yeah, a signing I really like for the Packers to address their need in secondary. And all they really lost is Darrell Slayton, so due to them not really doing much in free agency, just getting Nate Hobbs. I think they're in a similar tier with the Lions at that B minus spot. The Texans have had a little bit of movement today. Tremon Smith from the Broncos to be a special teams guy for basically $4 million a year, but base of $4.5 million a year. Sheldon Rankins came from the Bengals over to the Texans to be one of the depth pieces on the defensive line and probably start because of the loss of Folu Fadikasi and Mario Edwards Jr. Derek Barnett resigns to be a depth piece um, for the Texans. He was DN3 last year, basically rotating with Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. And then Braxton Berrios comes in for $2 million a year to be that special teams punt returning guy, and Justin Watson comes in to be a depth piece at wide receiver. And the Texans had one more signing that um, they made that I'd like to show y'all here, and that would be Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor, uh, really good rusher, had 20 something sacks over the last couple years. Get him for cheap. 24.5 sacks over the last 4 years. You get him for good money, $5.5 million a year, 5.25 over 1 year. Um, yeah, good rusher, able to be a dependable guy. If someone gets hurt, able to rotate alongside Derek Barnett to be that two-headed demon off the bench. One of the best edge combos in the league, I think. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson being able to rotate with one of the best edge combos off the bench in Darrell Taylor and Derek Barnett. So overall, the Texans haven't really done much. They tend to do this. They address players that they can find for cheap and good value, and special teams guys on the first day. Um, so overall, with the signings, I'd just give them a C plus. Moving on to the Colts, who have made two big signings today. In Cam Bynum and Charvarius Ward, both of them getting $60 million a year. Cam Bynum split between 4 years, and Charvarius Ward through 3. Charvarius Ward's one of the better corners in the league. Not best, sorry. He gets $35 million guaranteed, so basically half of his contract is fully guaranteed. He's getting $60 million in total. Really good corner, just getting a little bit older. He'll be 33 by the end of the contract, so don't really know where his value will be at the end of that. But Cam Bynum, one of the younger guys in free agency, getting a 4 year deal. He'll be 31 at the end of it. $15 million a year. One of the better safeties in the league. Came from corner 2 free safety. One of the guys I like a lot. And then Ashton Dolan resigns for $4.25 million a year, basically to be a depth piece at the wide receiver spot for the Colts. But they made two big signings and two signings I think that will help them on the defensive side of the ball a lot. So for that, I will give them a B. Moving on to the Jaguars, who've had a lot of movement today, actually, but not movement I particularly like. You get Patrick McCarry for $12.5 million a year, a signing that I like. You need to address the interior offensive line. He does that for you. Jordan Lewis at the cornerback position from the Cowboys for $10 million a year. I like Jordan Lewis as a player. I don't know if $10 million is worth all that for him. But again, a player I like. I just think he'll be too old at the end of the contract. He'll be 33 as well. So a guy that'll be old, and I think his value is going to depreciate a little bit over the next couple years. I don't think he'll be worth that $10 million a year by the end of the contract. Eric Murray I don't understand this. You're getting three years for a guy that's already 31. He'll be 34, near 35 at the end of the deal. And you're paying him $7.5 million a year. $12 million guaranteed. For a total of $22.5 million a year. He was good for the Texans, don't get me wrong, but he's just very, very old. Um, Especially towards the end of his deal, I don't think he'll be worth anywhere near that figure. A signing that I do like is Robert Hainsey, the center from the Buccaneers. You're getting him for $7 million a year. Younger, will be near 30 at the end of his contract, but good scheme fit, moving from that Liam Cohen system from the Buccaneers to Liam Cohen of the Jags as he's the new head coach. So a signing that I feel will be able to bring that playbook to the center of attention in the offense. So that's a signing I like. Dyami Brown, can't really complain. $10 million over 1 year. Um, Pretty much just a dependable target for Trevor Lawrence, a young guy. Prove it deal to an extent. You're getting $10 million, so it's a good amount. Don't get me wrong, but um, it's just over the course of 1 year. So you're paying a lot for a dependable target. But at the end of the day, he's off the books after this year. So depending on what he does, it's depending on how much money he gets next year. Nick Mullins, just backup quarterback money, $3.5 million a year. Um, for 2 years, he'll be 31 at the or 32 at the end of it. Sorry, but he'll just back up Trevor Lawrence pretty much. Johnny Munt to be one of those backup tight ends, as well as Hunter Long. I think Hunter Long can play a little bit bigger of a role than Johnny Munt, but they're getting similar money. And then Chuma Idoga from the Cowboys with undisclosed money to be one of the tackles that um, can either back up or start if any injuries occur. So overall for the Jaguars, a lot of moves, but a lot of moves I don't particularly like, so I'll just give them a C. Moving on to the Chiefs, who have had a decent amount of action early on. They lost Tershawn Wharton to the Panthers, Samaje Perine to the Bengals, and Justin Watson to the Texans, but were able to get Elijah Mitchell, who's a good running back, I think better in the playoffs, just has a lot of juice for $3.5 million a year, and they seem to always do this. Similar to the Samaje Perine thing, they just always seem to find a running back to sign and be productive for them for a year. And then they're able to sign Jalen Moore from the 49ers for $15 million a year. I think that's a little overpaid, but you really need to address that left tackle position. I think that's why they paid that amount of money for him. But other than that, they haven't really done anything all too much. So for the Chiefs, I'll just give them a C plus, because they're able to get a guy that can be productive for them in Elijah Mitchell and a potential starter at the left tackle position in Jalen Moore. Moving on to the Raiders, who had an interesting start, losing Nate Hobbs, Robert Spillane, and Trayvon Moehrig. They were able to rebound that by re-signing Malcolm Kuntz, signing Alex Kappa a couple days ago, and Jeremy Chin. Jeremy Chin was on a prove-it deal with the Commanders, showed out, and got $8 million a year to essentially fulfill that Trayvon Moehrig role. Malcolm Kuntz was re-signed for $12 million over the course of 1 year. Good to end. I think someone that's going to start for them next year alongside Jeremy Chin. And Alex Kappa, a good guard that's going to be able to start for them next year. So you're losing 3 starters. You're getting 3 starters back in return for cheaper deals, opening up cap space. Um, but the 3 guys you lost were one of your core guys in Trayvon Moehrig and Nate Hobbs, and one of your best linebackers, if not the best linebacker, was a standout player last year in Robert Spillane. But you replaced them, or not really replaced them. You didn't get any corner or linebacker in return, but you're able to get 3 starters, 2 new and 1 returning in Malcolm Kuntz. So overall, I'll just give you a C plus. Moving on to the Chargers, who lost Josh Palmer and Poona Ford. They were able to sign Dante Jackson to be one of their boundary corners. I think someone that can start with Asante Samuel out of contract. Tier Tart resigning and Bradley Bozeman resigning. Haven't really done too much today, other than getting your guys back and getting a corner to play on the boundary for 2 years. So for that reason, similar to many teams before that just haven't really done all that much today, I'll just give them a C. Moving on to the Rams, who were able to get Davante Adams for $22 million a year, but I believe it's 23, and Poona Ford for 10, which I actually really like. Two really good signings, 2 guys that can be starters and impactful players from day one. Poona Ford really elevates the level of that defensive line on the interior. I think a better version of Bobby Brown, good replacement for him, who went off to the Panthers. Um, I can't remember which deal went through first, Poona Ford or Bobby Brown, but at the end of the day, Poona Ford's a really good D tackle, and Davante Adams is one of the star receivers in the league. So the Rams were able to get 2 very impactful players for them. So for that, I'll give them the B plus. Moving on to the Dolphins, who have done nothing besides get Zach Wilson, and for Zach Wilson, I got to give an A plus. To be honest, I'm just kidding. I'll just give him a D. I haven't. I guess it's kind of ironic. But yeah, haven't really done anything besides get the backup quarterback behind Tua for a pretty expensive deal worth $6 million a year. But I guess Tua, with those health concerns, you get someone that can technically be a starter for you in Zach Wilson. Moving on to the Vikings, who were pretty busy at the beginning of the day, and then were able to get Ryan Kelly for a relatively cheap deal. They mostly lost a lot of their guys, but were able to get Ryan Kelly, who I think is a plug and play starter at the center position, and Isaiah Rodgers, who can start for them on the boundary from the Eagles for $5.5 million, which I think is a cheap deal for him. So they got two impactful guys for cheap in Ryan Kelly for $9 million a year and Isaiah Rodgers for 5.5. Ryan Kelly I thought would get around 12, 13, and Isaiah Rodgers around 7.5, but just didn't tend to be the case, I guess. Vikings were able to capitalize, get them for cheap after losing guys like Patrick Jones, Cam Bynum, Sam Darnold. Um, so they lost really impactful guys, but they were able to get some guys that are potential, or not even potential starters, that will be starters come week one. And Ryan Kelly will be that pretty dominant center for them, and Isaiah Rodgers one of the boundary corners for them. So overall, with the Vikings, I'll give them a B minus because you're able to find two starters for relatively good value for cheap. Moving on to the Patriots, who splashed so much cash today, it was absurd. Milton Williams from the Eagles to the Patriots for $26 million a year. Carlton Davis from the Lions to the Patriots for 20. Harold Landry from the Titans to the Patriots for 14.5. Robert Spillane from the Raiders to the Patriots for 11. Morgan Moses from the Jets to the Patriots for 8. Matt Collins from the Bills to the Patriots for 4.2. Josh Dobbs from the 49ers to the Patriots for 4. And Chris Tonga from the Cardinals to the Patriots for 2.7. Milton Williams, I really like. I don't know if he's worth 26. I would say he's near low 20s, but not high 20s. Um, but I mean, can't really complain. You find your D tackle one, a guy that can really help stuff the run and get to the quarterback at an excellent rate at the D tackle position. You were in a bidding war, so I can see why the price got brought up so much for him. With the Panthers and the Cardinals, as previously stated. But yeah, I think the best player in free agency and you're able to get for that price in a bidding war, solid deal. Able to get him for 4 years till he's 30. Um, Carlton Davis, he's going to be 31 by the end of the contract, so not too bad. You're paying him $20 million a year, but guaranteed 34.5, so it's not as much as you perceive if he's not able to stay healthy. One of the better boundary corners in the league, really good at instincts, really good at flying to the ball. If you watch that game against the Texans, he was really good. Harold Landry, a Pro Bowl outside linebacker, able to rack up sack numbers, going from the Titans to the Patriots for 14.5 million. Reuniting with Mike Vrabel, where he excelled under his system in Tennessee, able to be a Pro Bowl outside linebacker when he was there. And I think someone that can feed off Milton Williams in the interior very well. And then addressing that actual linebacker spot is Robert Spillane from the Raiders, one of the standout linebackers from last year. Really good tackler. Guy that's just going to rack up tackle numbers, to be honest. Probably in the 130s, 140s every year. Um, Moving on to Morgan Moses, a guy that I think can be a dependable tackle. He gave him 3 years, which I don't really know why. I don't know how long he'll stay in the league for. He's already 34, so I don't really see him staying till 37. But the years that you'll have him, he'll be a serviceable tackle and most likely a starter for you for only $8 million a year, so not bad. Matt Collins pretty much just being a locker room guy and a wide receiver four from the Buffalo Bills for 4.2 million, pretty cheap deal. Josh Dobbs getting backup quarterback money at 4 million, and Chris Tonga to be a backup D tackle at 2.7 million. So overall, the Patriots had a really busy and expensive day. I think they splashed cash where they needed to splash cash. I think you could have got a little cheaper at some positions, but at the end of the day, you had a really good day if you are a Patriots fan or a member of the Patriots front office. So I will be giving you an A. Moving on to the Saints, who had nothing happen, so they get an F. Obviously, the only thing that had happened was losing Paulson Adebo to the Giants for $18 million a year, who we're moving on to next. Um, as you see there, they were semi-busy throughout the day, giving out cheap contracts, but also re-signing Darius Slayton to $12 million a year. Paulson Adebo, I want to talk more about. I think one of the standout corners, getting better every year, similar to a Trayvon Moehrig type of player, just continuing to get better, able to play that boundary corner very well. And I think $18 million a year for him isn't all too bad, especially when the total guaranteed is only 36. James Hudson, I think, is a guy that can back up Evan Neal or Andrew Thomas, or even start over Andrew Neal, who's just been, or not Andrew Neal, sorry, I got them mixed up. Evan Neal, who's just been pretty awful for the Giants. Um, Roy Robertson Harris can be a starting D tackle alongside Dexter Lawrence if you want that to happen. But 4.5 million shows that he can be a rotational guy or a starter if you want him to. And Chris Board can be a rotational linebacker from the Ravens or a special teams guy for $3 million a year. Um, yeah, I think the Giants had a pretty solid day. I'll give them a B minus, or actually I'll give them a B. Um, for it being able to retain Slayton and keeping Paulson or obtaining Paulson Adebo. Sorry. Moving on to the Jets, who were able to get Justin Fields in one of the bigger deals of the day. $20 million a year for a starting quarterback. I mean, if you're a Jets fan, it's pretty much just sign me up for those next 2 years and see how it goes because you're not paying all too much. You're able to address other positions and re-sign guys like Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner next year just because you're not paying the quarterback position all too much. And you pay Brandon Stevens $12 million a year, another solid player that I'm surprised the Ravens let go, but I guess they can see the development of Nate Wiggins and other guys at the corner position like Marlon Humphrey. So, not the end of the world for the Ravens. Good signing for the Jets. I think two good signings overall. You're able to get a starting corner as well as your starting quarterback. So, can't really fault them too much. You're getting starting quarterback. So, I think for that, you're getting an A, or not an A, sorry, a B plus. Moving on to the Eagles, who had nothing happen all day, just losing their guys pretty much. And for that, I'll just give them an F. Pretty self-explanatory. I mean, every team that hasn't made a signing just gets an F. Moving on to the Steelers, who have signed Malik Harrison for $5 million a year to be a backup linebacker. Um, Nothing else really happened. Lost their starting tackle, lost Justin Fields, lost Dante Jackson. Um, I'd give him a D minus, to be honest. Just not much movement today. The 49ers only signed Luke Farrell from the Jags for $6.75 million a year. Younger tight end, able to block. Um, Guy that I like, but again, if that's your only signing for the day, I'm a little concerned with the amount you're losing this offseason. So I'll give him a D. Moving on to the Seahawks, who were able to bring in Sam Darnold for $33.5 million a year. A big deal happened pretty early on in the day. Guy I really like, able to follow Clint Kubiak and play that Viking system that he was just in. Able to throw the ball across the middle of the field really well. I think a guy that can excel and will only be 31 by the end of that contract. So you could even re-sign him if he performs well for you, but you're paying him a lot of money. But I think it's fair the price you got him at 33.5 million. I thought he could be paid a little bit more, to be honest. You're only giving him $55 million guaranteed, so if he doesn't excel, you're not paying him all too much. If he was to get hurt or anything like that. But then again, a signing I really like, you find your quarterback for the next 3 years for the Seahawks after losing Geno Smith to the Raiders. So for that, I'll give you a B. Moving on to the Buccaneers, who just signed Hassan Reddick like 5 minutes into free agency, was insane. They came back from commercial break and they were like, I think they said like we broke the world record for the fastest signing, and that was Hassan Reddick to the Buccaneers. But I think that's a really good scheme fit. Feeds off Yaya Diaby very well. Um, yeah, I think a guy that can be in the double-digit sack numbers if he's committed to playing for the Buccaneers. Um, but yeah, I mean, good player. Can't really say too much. Um, Bad about Hassan Reddick besides those commitment issues. I think someone that can rack up the sack numbers for you. But that's your only signing of the day. So for that, I'll give you a B minus because he'll be an impactful player for you. Moving on to the Titans, who signed Dan Moore for a ton of money, $20.5 million a year for um, a serviceable tackle, I'll say. Re-signed Sebastian Joseph for $7.5 million for 1 year, and Cody Barton from the Broncos to the Titans for $7 million a year. I mean, you find two starters today and retain one starter in Sebastian Joseph. So can't really fault you too much. I just think you overpaid a little too much for Dan Moore. I think he was worth somewhere in the $16 million a year range, not the 20 and a half. So you could have saved like $60 million in my opinion. Um, Cody Barton, I mean, $7 million for a starting linebacker, you're not really going to complain about. I think that's a good signing for them. Um, and someone that can pair well with, is it Ernest? No, it's not Ernest Jones. Um, they traded Ernest Jones. I'm blanking. Jerome Baker, is that it? I think so. Yes, right? 2024 depth chart. I'm tweaking. Yes, I think it is Jerome Baker, or it was Kenneth Murray. I can't remember who it was, but they traded linebackers with the Seahawks. Um, but yeah, you get Cody Barton, who can be a starting linebacker for you. So overall, I think you had a fine day. I just think you overpaid a little too much. So for that, I'll give you a B minus. And last but not least, the Commanders, who just signed Javon Kinlaw for $15 million. Your bigger deal of the day was a trade with the Texans for Laramie Tunsil, which I provided my reaction to in my previous video, or 2 videos ago, I guess, because I made a mock draft in between. But Javon Kinlaw, really good D tackle, younger guy, only 27.5 years of age. I thought he was like 25. But yeah, $15 million for a position that I think you needed to address, but I'd rather you address the exterior pass rush more than anything. But um, good player for $15 million. I think that's fair value for him. But that's the only move you've made today. So for that, you're getting an impactful player on the interior after losing um, Jonathan Allen. And so my last ranking, but not least for the Commanders, would be a B minus. So that wraps up the entire league, 1 through 32, all the free agents that have gone. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you do, and please go follow my Twitter at YTRepulse2S or 2X. Sorry, not 2S. I'll leave the link down in the description. Um, but yeah, if you did like this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.